History is filled with tales that have been passed down for centuries, but not all of them are true. Some of the stories we learned in school or heard growing up are little more than myths. Today, we're diving deep into some of the biggest historical myths to uncover the truth behind the lies. Get ready to have your mind blown as we debunk these legendary misconceptions. 1. One of the most iconic images of Vikings is their horned helmets, but there's no historical evidence to support this. Real Viking helmets were practical and designed for battle, without any decorative horns. The myth likely started in the 19th century when a costume designer for Wagner's opera added horns for dramatic effect. So those fearsome Viking warriors weren't quite as horned as we imagined. 2. Napoleon complex has been used to describe people compensating for their height. But did you know Napoleon wasn't actually that short? He was around 5'6", which was average for a Frenchman of his time. The myth likely stems from a mix-up between French and British measurements. The British, always keen to mock their enemy, happily exaggerated his supposed lack of stature. 3. It's often said that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space. In reality, astronauts have confirmed that the wall isn't easily visible from low Earth orbit without aid. It's long, but its materials blend into the surrounding environment. So while it's an incredible feat of engineering, it's not the space spectacle we've been led to believe. 4. Despite what you might have heard, most educated people in the Middle Ages knew the Earth was round. This misconception gained traction in the 19th century, when it was used to criticize medieval thought as ignorant or backward. In fact, as early as ancient Greece, philosophers like Pythagoras and Aristotle had already proposed a spherical Earth. 5. George Washington's dental issues are well documented, but his dentures weren't made of wood. Instead, they were a mix of materials including ivory, gold, and even human teeth. The wooden teeth myth likely comes from the dentures' stained appearance, which made them look wooden over time. While they weren't exactly high-tech, they weren't wooden either. 6. Marie Antoinette is famously credited with the phrase, "let them eat cake," when told the French peasants had no bread. But there's no evidence she ever said this. The quote first appeared in a book by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, written years before she even became queen. The phrase was likely attributed to her to paint her as out of touch during the French Revolution. 7. Here's a motivational myth you might have heard. Albert Einstein failed math as a child. The truth? He was actually quite advanced in mathematics. By the time he was 12, he was mastering calculus. The myth likely arose from a misunderstanding about different grading systems. So sorry, but Einstein wasn't the struggling student we'd like to relate to. 8. You've probably seen depictions of knights swinging enormous swords that look impossible to lift. However, historical weapons were designed for effectiveness, not showmanship. Swords and maces were usually lighter and more practical than what movies and games suggest. Those oversized weapons, they're more Hollywood than history. 9. When we think of the Salem witch trials, we often imagine witches being burned at the stake. But in reality, no one was burned during the trials. The accused were executed by hanging, with one man pressed to death with heavy stones. Burning witches was more common in Europe than in colonial America. 10. The word vomitorium conjures up images of Romans feasting and purging to eat more. But in truth, a vomitorium was simply a passageway in a stadium or theater that allowed crowds to exit quickly. The association with vomiting is purely a misunderstanding of the term. History is full of myths and misconceptions, but the truth is often just as fascinating. From Viking helmets to Roman passageways, these debunked myths remind us to question what we've been told. Which myth surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more episodes of Historical Truths Revealed.